A former Congo premier who was captured.
Join us as we look at 20 African presidents who were assassinated in the most dangerous ways. 20. Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Emery Lumumba was a Congolese politician and independence activist who served as the Democratic Republic of the Congo's first prime minister from June to September 1960, following the May 1960 election. He led the Congolese national movement from 1958 until his execution in January 1961. He was an African nationalist and Pan-Africanist who contributed significantly to the Congo's transition from a Belgian colony to an independent republic. A mutiny in the army broke out shortly after Congo's independence in June 1960, kicking off the Congo crisis. Lumumba attempted to flee to Stanleyville to join his allies, who had established a new anti-Mobutu state known as the Free Republic of the Congo following a coup. Lumumba was abducted by Joseph Desire Mobutu, taken to Katanga, and killed by separatist Katangan authorities led by Moise Tshombe with the assistance of Belgian partisans. He was viewed as a martyr for the Pan-African cause. Belgium issued a formal apology in 2002 for its role in the execution. 19. Sylvanus Olympio. Sylvanus Olympio was a Togolese politician who served as prime minister and later president of Togo from 1958 until his assassination in 1963. He descended from the prominent Olympio family, which includes his uncle Octaviano Olympio, one of Togo's wealthiest individuals in the early 1900s. Shortly after midnight on January 13, 1963, Olympio and his wife were awakened by military personnel breaking into their home. Before morning, U.S. Ambassador Leon B. Pilata discovered Olympio's body 3 steps from the U.S. embassy door. It was the first coup d'etat in the French and British territories of Africa that gained independence in the 1950s and 1960s, and Olympio is known as the first African president slain during a military coup. 18. Ngarda Tombalbaye. Francois Tombalbaye, sometimes known as Ngarda Tombalbaye, was a Chadian politician who served as the country's first president from 1960 until his overthrow in 1975. As a totalitarian leader, his divisive policies as president resulted in factional conflict, a trend of authoritarian leadership, and political instability that persists in Chad today. As the drought intensified across Africa and the economy deteriorated, people were obliged to volunteer in a massive attempt to enhance cotton production. With his popularity in the south dwindling, Tombalbaye lashed out at the army, making arbitrary promotions and demotions. Finally, on April 13, 1975, when several of the country's top officers were jailed for their roles in an attempted coup, he was purportedly shot in his own palace and died because of his injuries. 17. Marian Ngouabi. On March 18, 1977, Marian Ngouabi, the military president of the Republic of the Congo, was assassinated. Ngouabi began his career as commander of the Republic of the Congo's 1st Paratrooper Battalion and rose to this position following the military revolution that deposed former President Masamba in 1968. Ngouabi initially chose Alfred Raoul as prime minister, but after Raoul's reign became unstable, owing in part to Ngouabi's elimination of any opposition to his reign. Ngouabi eventually assumed the role himself, which he held from December 31, 1969 to March 18, 1977. It is suspected that Ngouabi was slain because he refused to coordinate with French officials who wanted more control over Angola's oil-rich Cabinda province and asked Ngouabi to annex it. However, despite his unwillingness to participate in this conspiracy, they colluded with Congolese opposition groups to remove him from power. Following several unsuccessful attempts, a purported suicide commando assassinated him. 16. Amilcar Cabral. Amilcar Cabral was a Bissau-Guinean and Cape Verdean agricultural engineer, political activist, and diplomat. He was one of Africa's most prominent anti-colonial leaders. He was also a Pan-Africanist, intellectual nationalist, and revolutionary poet. Cabral, also known by the war name Abel Jassy, headed Guinea-Bissau's and the Cape Verde Islands nationalist movement, as well as the subsequent Guinea-Bissau independence struggle. He was killed on January 20th, 1973, approximately 8 months before Guinea-Bissau's unilateral proclamation of independence. He was heavily influenced by Marxism and became an inspiration to revolutionary socialists and national independence movements around the world. Cabral began forming a People's Assembly in 1972 to prepare for Guinea-Bissau's independence, but on January 20th, 1973, angry former rival Inocencio Kani and another PAIGC member shot and assassinated him in Conakry. 15. Samora Machel. Samora Moises Machel was a Mozambican military commander and political figure. He was a socialist in the Marxist-Leninist strain who served as Mozambique's first president after the country gained independence in 1975. Machel died in office in 1986 after his presidential plane crashed near the Mozambique-South African border. In 2007, however, Jacinto Veloso, one of Machel's most unwavering followers inside Frelimo, claimed in his memoirs that Machel's death was the result of a conspiracy involving the South African and Soviet secret agencies, both of which had motives to get rid of him. According to Veloso, the Soviet envoy once requested a meeting with the president to express the USSR's concern about Mozambique's perceived sliding away towards the west, to which Machel allegedly answered, "Vai a merda," which meant, "Go to hell." After commanding the interpreter to translate, he departed the room. 14. Cyprien Ntaryamira. Cyprien Ntaryamira was a Burundian politician who served as president of Burundi from February 5, 1994 to his death 2 months later. Ntaryamira, a Hutu born in Burundi, studied there before escaping to Rwanda to escape ethnic conflict and finish his education. He was involved in a Burundian student movement, co-founded the Socialist Burundi Workers' Party, and received an agriculture degree. In 1983, he returned to Burundi and worked in agriculture. However, he was temporarily arrested as a political prisoner. In 1986, he co-founded the Front for Democracy in Burundi, which won the country's general election in 1993. On July 10th, he was appointed Minister of Agriculture and Animal Husbandry, but in October, Tutsi soldiers assassinated the president and other high officials during a failed coup. 13. Juvenal Habyarimana. Juvenal Habyarimana was an army soldier and politician who ruled Rwanda almost single-handedly for more than 2 decades after seizing power in a 1973 coup. Habyarimana first prohibited all political activities. In 1975, he founded the National Revolutionary Movement for Development, with himself as the sole leader of the single-party state. A new constitution, adopted in December 1978, called for a restoration to civilian administration, and Habyarimana was elected president the same month. He was re-elected in 1983 and 1988, when voters reportedly overwhelmingly backed his continuation in office as the sole presidential contender. Aside from a failed coup in April 1980, Habyarimana's hold on power was virtually unbroken. Until 1990, Habyarimana's administration had resulted in only minor acts of violence against the minority Tutsi, nothing on the scale of the persecution and mass killings that happened prior to the 1973 coup. 12. Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara was a Burkina military officer, Marxist rebel, and Pan-Africanist who led Burkina Faso from a coup in 1983 until his assassination in 1987. Supporters see him as a charismatic and iconic character of the revolution. After being chosen prime minister in 1983, Sankara's disagreements with the current government led to his eventual imprisonment. While he was under house arrest, a gang of revolutionaries took power on his behalf in a popular coup later that year. At the age of 33, Sankara became president of the Republic of Upper Volta, launching social, environmental, and economic policies, and renaming the country Burkina Faso from its French colonial name, Upper Volta. Sankara's revolutionary programs for African self-reliance made him an icon in many of Africa's impoverished countries, and he remained popular among most of his country's population. Some of his measures upset members of the former ruling elite, notably tribal chiefs, as well as the governments of France and its ally, the Ivory Coast. In our thumbnail, we can see Thomas Sankara on the left and another African leader being killed on the right. It seems to me that life for any African leader was never easy or safe. 11. Laurent Désiré Kabila. Laurent Désiré Kabila, a Congolese revolutionary and politician, was the Democratic Republic of the Congo's third president from 1997 until his assassination in 2001. He was a lifelong opponent of Mobutu Sese Seko and led the Alliance of Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Congo, a Rwandan and Ugandan-backed rebel organization that invaded Zaire and deposed Mobutu during the First Congo War from 1996 to 1997. Kabila found himself in a delicate position as a puppet of his foreign backers after becoming the country's new president and changing its name back to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Following the Kasika massacre, he ordered the withdrawal of all foreign troops from the country to prevent a coup, resulting in the Second Congo War, in which his former Rwandan and Ugandan allies began sponsoring several rebel groups to overthrow him, including the Rally for Congolese Democracy and the Movement for the Liberation of the Congo. 10. João Bernardo Vieira. João Bernardo Vieira, a Bissau-Guinean politician, served as president of Guinea-Bissau from 1980 to 1999, save for a 3-day stint in May 1984 and from 2005 until his assassination in 2009. Following a military coup against President Luis Cabral in 1980, Vieira commanded the Military Council of the Revolution until 1984, when civilian control was restored. Opposition parties were permitted in 1991, and Vieira won a multi-party presidential election in 1994. He was deposed at the end of the 1998 and 1999 Civil War and fled into exile. He made a political comeback in 2005, winning the presidential election. Vieira was assassinated by soldiers on March 2, 2009, presumably in reprisal for a bomb strike that killed Guinea-Bissau's military head, General Batista Tagme Nawai, hours earlier. The military publicly disputed the charges after anonymous army personnel said Vieira was responsible for Nawai's death. Throughout his presidency, Vieira referred to himself as God's gift to Guinea-Bissau. 9. Modibo Keita. Modibo Keita, a Malian politician, was the country's first president from 1960 until 1968. He advocated a sort of African socialism. Moussa Traoré toppled him in a coup d'etat in 1968. As president, Keita created the US, RDA, as the only official party and implemented socialist policies, including massive nationalization. Keita backed the non-aligned movement and maintained strong ties with the West, despite his socialist beliefs. He was a key Pan-Africanist who helped create the Organization of African Unity Charter and negotiate the 1963 Bamako Accords, which ended Morocco and Algeria's Sand War. Dissatisfaction with his administration increased in the late 1960s because of gradual economic collapse and oppressive reactions to opposition. He was deposed in the 1968 Malian coup d'etat by Moussa Traoré, who became president and imprisoned him until his death in 1977. 8. Ibrahim Bare Mainasara. General Ibrahim Bare Mainasara, a Nigerian military officer and diplomat, commanded Niger from 1996 until his assassination. He captured and then lost power in military coups. Under Mainasara's tenure, a new constitution was ratified by referendum in May 1996, followed by a presidential election on July 7th and 8th, 1996. Mainasara received around 52% of the vote, but the election was largely regarded as illegitimate. On the second day of voting, he disbanded the Electoral Commission and replaced it with another. On the same day, he ordered the 4 opposition candidates placed under house arrest for 2 weeks. Mainasara was sworn in on August 7th. On April 9th, 1999, Mainasara was ambushed and shot to death by troops, apparently members of the Presidential Guard, at the airport in the capital city of Niamey as he was about to board his helicopter. The circumstances of the assassination were unclear. However, rumors stated Mainasara was attempting to leave the country. Initially, his death was officially stated as an unfortunate accident, but this explanation was widely rejected. 7. Mohamed Boudiaf. Mohamed Boudiaf was an Algerian political leader and co-founder of the Revolutionary National Liberation Front, which spearheaded the Algerian War of Independence. Boudiaf was exiled shortly after Algeria's independence and did not return for 27 years. He returned in 1992 to take a position as chairman of the High Council of State. Boudiaf's stint as HCE chairman ended on June 29, 1992, when he was slain by a bodyguard during a televised public speech at the opening of a cultural center in Annaba, his first tour outside of Algiers as president of state. The murder shocked Algeria and is still regarded as a watershed incident in the country's contemporary history. 6. Abdirashid Ali Sharmark. Abdirashid Ali Sharmark served as Prime Minister of the Somali Republic from July 12, 1960 to June 14, 1964, and President of the Somali Republic from July 6, 1967, until his assassination on October 15, 1969. He was the father of Somali Prime Minister Omar Sharmark. In 1968, Sharmark narrowly evaded assassination attempts. An explosive burst near the car taking him back from the airport, but did not kill him. On October 15, 1969, while on an official visit to the northern town of La Sanad, Sharmark was assassinated by one of his bodyguards. The cop was on patrol outside the guest home where the president was sleeping and fired an automatic rifle at close range, killing Sharmark instantaneously. Observers suggested that the assassination was motivated by personal rather than political reasons. 5. Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi. Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi, a Nigerian military officer, was Nigeria's first military head of state. He gained control during the pandemonium that followed the military revolution of January 15, 1966. He ruled from January 16, 1966, until his assassination by a group of mutinous northern Nigerian officers and men led by Major Murtala Muhammad and including Captain Theophilus Danjuma in a revolt against his government known as the July Counter-Coup. Danjuma apprehended Aguiyi Ironsi and questioned him about his suspected involvement in the coup that led to the death of Sokoto's Sardana, Ahmadu Bello. The circumstances surrounding Aguiyi Ironsi's death have sparked widespread debate in Nigeria. His body, along with Fajuyi's, was later discovered in a neighboring woodland. 4. Richard Ratsimandrava. Colonel Richard Ratsimandrava was a Malagasy politician and soldier who served as Madagascar's president for 6 days in February 1975 before being assassinated in office. He was born in 1931 as a Marina from a Marina family. Ratsimandrava, a graduate of the French Saint Cyr military institution, served throughout French Africa before returning to Madagascar after the country got independence in 1960. He entered the army and rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel by 1968. He formed a military government in 1972 to replace replace Philibert Tsiranana's independence government, and Ratsimandrava was appointed Minister of the Interior. Several top officers were able to control the army, resulting in Ramanantsoa's ouster on February 5, 1975. Ratsimandrava was slain 6 days after taking office, at 8 p.m., while traveling from the presidential palace to his residence. The death was proclaimed by the new ruling military committee. It alleged that the president had been assassinated by personnel of the Republican Security Forces, a counterinsurgency organization disbanded by his predecessor. The tragedy nearly triggered a civil war between supporters of the military administration and former President Tsiranana. In 2006, on the 31st anniversary of the colonel's assassination, a meeting was organized in Madagascar. 3. Abeid Amani Karume. Abeid Amani Karume was the first president of Zanzibar. He earned this title as a result of a revolt that deposed Sir Jamshid bin Abdullah, Zanzibar's last reigning sultan, in January 1964. 3 months later, the United Republic of Tanzania was established, and Karume was named its first vice president, with Tanganyika's Julius Nyerere serving as its president. He was the father of Amani Abeid Karume, Zanzibar's previous president. In April 1972, Karume was slain in Zanzibar town. He was shot-killed by 4 gunmen while playing Bao in the Afro-Shirazi Party's offices. Retaliations were launched against those accused of opposing Karume's rule. During his term, he was able to nationalize land owned by Arabs and Indians and redistribute it to the poor majority of Zanzibarians. He also developed a system of free education and healthcare for all Zanzibarians, regardless of race, color, or origin. Aside from that, he built several residences for Zanzibar residents at low rents. Amani Abeid Karume, Abeid's son, was elected as president of Zanzibar twice, in 2000 and 2005, by a clear majority, and handed over power in late 2010 to his successor, Ali Mohammed Shein. 2. Murtala Ramat Muhammad. Murtala Ramat Muhammad was a Nigerian general who led the 1966 Nigerian counter-coup that overthrew the Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi military dictatorship, appeared significantly during the Nigerian Civil War, and then ruled Nigeria from July 1975 until his assassination in 1976. This time in Nigerian history, from the northern counter-coup triumph to Murtala's death, is widely seen as the institutionalization of the military in politics. On February 13, 1976, General Muhammad left for work along his normal route on George Street. Shortly after 8 a.m., his Mercedes-Benz car was driving slowly through the notorious Lagos traffic near the Federal Secretariat in Ikoyi, Lagos, when a group of soldiers, members of an aborted coup, led by Lieutenant Colonel Buka Suka Dimka, emerged from an adjacent petrol station, ambushed the vehicle, and assassinated Muhammad. Murtala Muhammad, 37, was slain together with his aide-de-camp, Lieutenant Akintunda Akinsahinwa, in his black Mercedes-Benz saloon car on February 13, 1976. The automobile was attacked when it was headed to his office in Doden Barracks, Lagos. The only evident form of defense was a pistol carried by his orderly, making his assassination simple. The assassination was part of Dimka's attempted coup, and he was hanged for treason on May 15, 1976, at Lagos's Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison. He was followed by Olusegun Obasanjo, Chief of Staff of Supreme Headquarters, who completed his plan for an orderly transition to civilian administration by handing over control to Shehu Shagari on October 1, 1979. 1. Melchior Ndadaye. Melchior Ndadaye was a Burundian banker and politician who won the 1993 election, becoming Burundi's first democratically elected and Hutu president. Despite his efforts to bridge the country's long-standing ethnic divide, his reforms infuriated soldiers in the Tutsi-dominated army, and he was slain during a failed military coup in October 1993, just 3 months after he gained power. His assassination set off a series of savage tit-for-tat massacres between the Tutsi and Hutu ethnic groups, eventually leading to the decade-long Burundi Civil War. After seeing these videos, it's clear that I would never want to be president of an African country, even if they offered me the job. What about you? Why don't you let us know in the comments below? Well, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give us a like and let us know in the comments what you think. Check out our other videos and subscribe to be part of the fun. Click on the notification icon so you can see our new videos as soon as they're uploaded. Thank you for watching and see you next time.